Welcome to our Sunday supper and to our home. On this week's show, we'll talk with two community and business leaders about how state government and the Attorney General can help small businesses survive the COVID-19 crisis and protect your jobs. Kevin Wallace is a former Bellevue City Council member and an owner in his family real estate business. Please say hello, Kevin.
Hello. Nice to be here.
Thanks. And Kerri Lonergan-Dreke is a former Linwood City Council member who's also an owner of the Lombardi restaurant chain. Please say hello, Kerri.
Hi, great to be here. Thanks for having us.
Thank you. This week we added to our family bubble. Our son Grant has been here for a while, finishing up his economics research fellowship. And now we've welcomed Nathan, his girlfriend Taylor, and his college roommate Hayden. They drove across the country from St. Louis to Issaquah. We had a bit of a scare when Nathan came down with a persistent cough in the final stretch. So we isolated them and Nathan got tested. And I'm very happy to share that he does not have the virus. Nathan and his friends all just graduated from college, and we are so proud of them and their achievements. Today, they're taking advantage of the weather and they're off climbing Mount Si. But before they left, we shot a quick video. Hi, Hayden. Good to see you. Tell us what you'll be doing this fall.
I'll be working at Boeing as a propulsion engineer in the Seattle area.
We are super excited to have you close by.
Yeah, I'm excited too.
How about you, Nathan?
I'll be starting a master's program in computer science, focusing on robotics at Georgia Tech starting next fall.
We're not excited to have you that far away, but good school, excited for you. Taylor, what are you doing this fall?
So I'll be doing a master's at Harvard in biomedical informatics, and that field is involved with developing vaccines for viruses like COVID-19.
Super cool, and I'm glad you explained that because I really don't know what it is you're studying, but very excited for you. And Grant, how about you this fall?
I'll be at the University of Chicago pursuing a PhD in economics.
Excellent, fun city, and we look forward to visiting you there. Mike and I are really proud of our kids and their friends. But like all parents, we worry about the future they're facing. Still, we believe in our country, its strength, and those of our communities. We believe we'll overcome the current challenges and that our children and yours will have a bright future. A big part of Mike's inspiration for public service over the years is to work to give all children a better future. Now I'll turn it over to Mike.
Thank you, Camille, and hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Tomorrow is Memorial Day, a day where we honor those who protected our country from the threat of foreign attack. Thanks to their sacrifice, our country has never been invaded by a foreign army. But on this Memorial Day, for the first time in our history, we face a foreign invader that is killing our people and devastating our economy, COVID-19. Now, on Memorial Day, we honor the sacrifice of our fallen heroes, like our sons Grant and Nathan did each year with their scout troops. We might actually have a picture of that. Their sacrifice has helped give us the greatest, most dynamic economy in the world. It created uplifting opportunity for their children. Today, we must fight the COVID-19 invasion to give our children the same opportunities. We'll talk about how to do that with our guests, Kevin Wallace and Kerri Lonergan-Dreke, in just a minute. Now, Camille grew up in a military family. I think we have a picture of her dad. In fact, she was born on an army base in Berlin, Germany. Her father, Stuart Schwartz, was an army dentist who worked on the teeth of the Nazi leaders Albert Speer and Rudolf Hess, who were in prison for their crimes against humanity during World War II. My father, Karl Vaska, and his family were among the millions of victims of atrocities committed by the Nazis and planned by those two war criminals. He and his family were burned out of their village, taken to the concentration camps, and then distributed as slave labor to serve the Nazi regime. I think we have a picture of him from that era. My dad was a homeless refugee when World War II ended in Europe 75 years ago last month. Memorial Day was always special to him because of the American soldiers who gave their lives on the beaches of Normandy and elsewhere to save Europe and to save him. He came to this country as a teenager with no parents and had to make his own way after high school. When I was growing up, my dad threw himself into community service in Redmond as a way to pay this country back, including as a leader and a coach in youth soccer leagues. This Memorial Day reminds us of the great sacrifice our parents and grandparents gave to keep this country safe and make it a land of opportunity. This Memorial Day should remind us that it is now our turn to fight for our country and our communities against the foreign invasion of the COVID-19 virus. We are fighting to save the lives of the ones we love, but we're also fighting so that we will continue to be a land of opportunity for all of us and for all of our children. I'm running for Attorney General to help lead our state's fight against the problems from COVID-19, the ones that it's causing or making worse. As your next Attorney General, I will work for you to protect our communities by addressing homelessness and cybercrime. I will work for you to be an independent and nonpartisan watchdog on state government. And I will work to protect your jobs by lifting some of the state regulatory and bureaucratic burdens on small business. Before we get to that last subject with our two guests, let me make one more observation about the Attorney General's role. Even before COVID-19, it was a big job, the second most powerful position in state government. It's gotten even bigger with the challenges of the virus. This was never a job for a hyper-partisan politician like Bob Ferguson. But this is not a time for on-the-job training either. Two other Republican candidates have filed for this office. Neither has any political or leadership experience in this state. And neither has legal experience on the complex issues the Attorney General must solve. One has just a few months, I've heard it's about 4, as a full-time attorney, and he has been a sales manager for the last several years. And the other has a solo law practice. For those of you who don't know me, I have 30 years of legal experience at one of our state's biggest and best law firms, and I have decades of experience and success as both a community and a political leader. I've taken on and won some of the toughest legal and community challenges. I'm the only candidate in this race with the experience our state needs right now to be the Attorney General that helps lead our state in the fight against COVID-19. Now let's get to our discussion of how the state and the Attorney General can help small businesses survive the COVID-19 crisis. Small businesses employ about 1/2 of our state's workforce. If small businesses fail, it will slow our state's economic recovery and make it more difficult for those who have lost their jobs to find new ones. Attorney General Rob McKenna led a state task force during the Great Recession a decade ago that came up with ideas to lift the state's regulatory and other burdens on small business. And Governor Dan Evans told us on this show a while back that during the Boeing bust of the early 1970s, the state did a similar thing. So let's start the conversation with Kevin Wallace, who is a former Bellevue City Council member and an owner in his family real estate business, and Kerri Lonergan-Dreke, who is a former Linwood City Council member and owns the Lombardi's chain of restaurants with her family. Kevin, first of all, can you tell, hello, and also
Hi.
can you tell us what you're seeing out there? How are small businesses doing?
Well, it's interesting. It's kind of depends on the type of small business. Wallace Properties has a portfolio of properties across Washington State, and in different sectors. There's apartment, office, and retail. And then we don't own hotels, fortunately for us, but we have friends who do, and so we kind of get a flavor of what the different all the different commercial real estate categories are doing. And I would say in order from best to worst, the apartments are actually doing pretty well. The renters for the upper income type units are continuing to pay rent for the most part. It's probably a 5% of the total problem. With lower income apartments, however, the problems are much more severe, because that's what whose jobs are being impacted by this crisis. For the most part, it's the lower income jobs. Office has not been all that hard hit so far. But again, every day that goes by is the earthquake keeps shaking the community financially speaking or economically speaking. And so the concerns grow greater and greater each month, which is particularly concerning about, June 1. June 1, the start of another month, is the start of another rent payment or another lease payment. And that's why, extending it from May 25th to May 30th or 31st is not all that big of a deal, comparatively speaking. But that June 1 deadline, when that flips over, that creates a really difficult milestone. On the retail side, that's where things start to really get worse. And I think Kerri can talk a lot about the restaurant industry, and that's really probably on the worst side of the retailers. Some have come through if they're able to survive, by providing delivery and that kind of thing. But most of them have been forced to shut down. And it's just, businesses were not built to be closed down with no revenue for this period of time. So the retailers have had a very difficult time, and their employees have been unemployed now for an extended period of time. So trying to get them back open and get those employees back in the stores and back up to speed again is going to be difficult, and becomes more difficult every day that goes by. Then finally, the hotels have just been the worst of the lot, and having to completely close down and have virtually no room revenue for months now. And then when reopening, the prospects of more conventions and rooms starting back up again are pretty bleak too. So that particular sector is going to be really hard hit, and there's a lot of question marks about what will happen with it on the other side.
Okay, thank you. We'll turn to Kerri. I guess the good news, Kerri, silver lining is you run a restaurant business, not a hotel business, but I know it's tough for restaurants as well. How are you doing, and how are other restaurants doing that you talk to?
Well, our sales are down 70% from the same period last year. We are at least able to do takeout, delivery. We also started grocery service, so that has brought in a little bit more revenue. Many other restaurants that are not currently open that decided to keep their doors closed, thinking that this might have been a shorter term closure than it turned out to be. I would say up to 30% of those restaurants probably will fail within a year. In fact, the Washington Hospitality Association, of which Lombardi's is a member of, is predicting that within a year, 30 to 40% of the restaurants that were open before the pandemic started will be closed. This is horrendously devastating, what is happening to our economy overall. My segment is the hardest hit, with the hotels after that. It's really hard to explain to those who are not small business owners what's at stake here. Unlike big corporations, my personal assets are on the line. I can't just walk away from a lease. I've personally guaranteed these leases, and Mike can speak to that, which means if my business shuts down, I'm forced to file personal bankruptcy as well as business bankruptcy, and I lose my house and everything else that I've worked for over 3 decades. So there's a lot at stake here, and it's frustrating to me as a business owner to hear people attack me for speaking out about the need to reopen our businesses safely now. We can do this. How is it that it's safe to go into a packed big box retailer like Lowe's, Home Depot, Costco, Walmart? I could go down the list, where people are not social distancing, they're not in masks, and yet I don't hear one peep out of the governor or the attorney general about that. But yet the attorney general and the governor are suing and attacking small businesses that are trying to stay open so they don't lose everything. So the first thing I would say, Mike, that you could do if you were attorney general right now would be to advise the governor that the state of emergency is over. The facts on the ground do not support a continued emergency where we cannot open our businesses safely. And that, in my opinion, I think he's abusing that power. And our current attorney general must believe that that what he's doing is okay, and that it's okay to prosecute small business owners, and yet it's perfectly okay to let out felons who are then recommitting crimes and hurting people. So that would be my first suggestion to you as Attorney General, if you were Attorney General right now, would be, you know, the state of emergency is over. We need to get our businesses reopened. And also small businesses are going to need tax relief, not just tax deferral. So as a business owner, the most onerous tax that we have is what's called business and occupation tax, or B&O for short. And that's a tax that we have to pay on gross receipts, whether we've made money that month or not. So in our slower months, I might have a $700 or $800 tax bill, and yet I might have lost money that month. So for the next year, I would advise state, county, sorry, I got lost there. My video dropped. State, county, and city government to reduce the B&O tax burden on small business.
Okay, well, there's a lot there, and I mentioned in my intro that I do believe the Attorney General, who is elected independently by the people, not appointed by the governor, should be an independent watchdog or check and balance on government power. The Attorney General does have many tools to do that, including advice, both private and public. And we did a whole show on the emergency power, so we're not going to get into that right now. But there's no question that the need for that independent watchdog power of the Attorney General to be revived and effective, if ever, it's now. And that's one of the things that I'm campaigning on. I want to give Kevin an opportunity to talk about the stay-at-home order. I'm sure your tenants all want it lifted, but I'd be interested to hear along the lines of what Kerri spoke to about, you know, what you're hearing from them, and in particular, Kevin, first for you, and then maybe Kerri for you. Given that the stay-at-home order is here for at least a while longer, are there things that can be done, perhaps incrementally, perhaps in other ways, to make it less burdensome on you? And I know there's a bunch of phases. You've probably studied those. Are there things about the phasing that can make it less burdensome on you or on your, Kevin, in your case, your tenants?
Well, at this point, I guess my view on the phasing is that the plan makes sense, and as far as getting what's entailed in phase 2 and phase 3 and so forth. The problem we have right now is that not going to phase 2 or telegraphing when you're going to go to phase 2 is extremely difficult. And I think at this point, in my view, that the refusal to move to phase 2 on June 1 is irrational. I really don't see a sound basis for it. As far as what the tenants are saying, it's a range of different responses from, we have a dentist who is in his 60s and, heading to near the end of his career, and built a business over 30 years. And the actions of this shutdown have basically nearly put him into bankruptcy. And he's distraught. Others are more sanguine about the situation and actually fairly inspirational in understanding that they're small businesses and aren't horribly well capitalized. Nobody really sets out to be capitalized well enough to survive 3 months of no revenue. But some of these folks who are in that situation really still maintain a positive outlook and feel like they're going to keep fighting and try to ride this out and then do what we can to. And when I say we, it's becoming really a partnership between the tenants and the landlords to try to preserve the business, the tenant's business. So what are we going to do to try to help each other get to the other side of get to the end of the year, and then try to move forward from there. So lots of different reactions. Yeah, sorry. I mean, lots of a gamut of reactions, but for the most part, I think people are fighters, and we're going to be looking to try to see what we can do to weather this storm and get on with life.
Kerri, maybe I'll frame it this way. The stay-at-home order will be lifted in phases. And as Kevin said, it's unclear when that will happen in King County, Snohomish County, Pierce, and some others. But within the context of those phases, are there things that, other than obviously moving through the phases more quickly, are there things that Governor Inslee or state government can do to help small business get through this tough period?
Well, I think I alluded to some of those earlier about relaxing B&O tax and continuing to be advocating for small business, which I don't see any of that. I mean, you asked me, how can he be more helpful to small business? Other than not, or allowing us to not have penalties for sales tax revenue that or taxes that we owe. I don't think he's done anything, in my opinion, to help small business, at least not from my perspective. Now, the cities that we do business in, like Everett, has been tremendously helpful. So as Bellingham, they, not only are they consumers of our product, but they have websites and social media where they are promoting shop local. Here's all the restaurants that are open, small retailers. I mean, I feel like they are much more aware and concerned about what's happening on the ground. Whereas at the state level, there's, again, in my opinion, there's a real high level of, they're disconnected from what's going on.
And Kerri, I'll stay with you. You mentioned that the Attorney General has sued or threatened to sue some small businesses recently over the stay-at-home order. Why do you have issues with that?
Well, I think that, for a couple of reasons, they're okay with using the state of emergency to let felons out, dangerous felons that have harmed other people. And yet they have no issue going after small businesses that are trying to keep their livelihood. And big businesses have fared very, very well in this crisis. Facebook, apparently their stock is at record highs. Costco their profits are strong right now. So it seems to me like there is a deference from the governor to support and almost reward big business, because think about it, small retailers are in a better position to protect people coming into their store than a big box retailer. I'm in a better position. Restaurateurs are experts in sanitation and keeping our guests safe. So again, a lot of the rules that are out there just don't make sense. And I'm not the only one that has this opinion. I mean, you read what's on Facebook. People, every day I see people saying, oh, I went into Lowe's and I've never seen it this crowded. And I'm hearing those stories from my friends as well. So how is that safe? But yet it's not safe for me to seat people on my patios outside, or to seat my restaurant at 50% capacity and have all my staff in masks and gloves. I just don't get it.
Yes, the Attorney General, Bob Ferguson, issued cease and desist orders and threatened to sue two small businesses, one in Pierce County and one in Snohomish County, for staying open in violation of state order, the state emergency law. I'm not condoning anyone violating those orders, but the Attorney General did something unprecedented. He threatened to use the state's consumer protection law to enforce what is a health restriction, unprecedented, basically politicizing and weaponizing the Consumer Protection Act. I talked to, well, let me just say, the local authorities in Pierce County were bypassed on that. I don't know about Snohomish County. They are charged with enforcing these rules, and every county will have a different approach to how to get maximum enforcement, which is best done by persuading people that it's in their interest to comply with the rules and the laws. Bob Ferguson bypassed those authorities, at least in Pierce County, and really, in what I view as a great overreach, threatened to use the Consumer Protection Act. If nothing else, I think it supports your point, Kerri, that he is tone deaf about how desperate some of these small businesses are to stay open so that they can make some money, so that they don't lose their business and maybe lose their house. And
Right.
I frankly, I was, as someone that's practiced in the consumer protection and antitrust arena for 30 years, including with many, many cases involving the Attorney General's office, I was quite shocked by what Bob Ferguson did.
Well, I was surprised to see that too as well, because I thought that he was really grasping at straws in order to do whatever he could to harm these businesses. And while I agree with you, you can't condone this. At the same time, I don't think that one should be going out of their way to pull every legal trick they can to try to harm small businesses that are just trying to stay alive. And then I haven't heard one peep out of either the governor or the attorney general about the individuals that have been attacked by these felons that they released. Now, maybe I've missed it, and I will say, if I did, I apologize. But I certainly haven't seen or read anything in any media that they've expressed any concern. So to me, this whole thing is really gotten politicized. And I wonder how is it that we have our two highest elected officials in our state? How did they sleep at night, knowing that what they're doing is enabling big business to just get bigger and wealthier, while a whole segment of business is just destroyed?
Well, one of my motivations for getting into this race, not the only one by any means, but it really jarred me when the judges in the King County Superior Court closed the main entrance to the court. Kevin may have even gone through that entrance when he was a young lawyer, closed it because a man was attacked, a lawyer attempting to enter, and almost killed. But he wasn't the only one. There were 160 attacks in the prior several months of people seeking justice in the courthouse. I was shocked by how a block that should be the safest in our city was among the least safe. And I was doubly shocked that the Attorney General said nothing about that. So this is a pattern that we've seen before. Well, let's move on to talking about the role of state government. I'm going to be optimistic here and say that the stay-at-home order will end soon, and we'll be able to begin some degree of normalcy. And as I mentioned earlier, Attorney General Rob McKenna led a task force during the Great Recession to lift the regulatory and other burdens on small business. It was a broad-based effort to just make it easier for business to survive during the Great Recession. Kevin, I'll start with you. What do you think state government can do to help small businesses, those that make it through this current crisis, to help them survive?
Well, I think they could start by trying to resolve the massive budget deficits they're going to have to the end of this year and into next without raising tax rates, particularly on business in the context of this question. They're with these billions of dollars of shortfall. I think the urge of the democratically controlled legislature is going to be to try to raise taxes to make it up. And that's going to be obviously incredibly burdensome if that's where they head. There were a number of regulations that were passed in the last few sessions, legislative sessions, that they could look at repealing. That's probably unlikely to happen, but the government at the state and local level simply continuing to ratchet up the burdens on businesses with these regulations really lays a very heavy toll on small businesses who aren't staffed up with the consultants, lawyers, and employees that they need to be able to understand and comply with all of the rules. So I think taxes and looking at changing the regulations, those are things that could happen. Other than that, I think getting out of the way is an important piece of the puzzle, and I think we need to recognize that this Seattle area, sometimes despite the government, is an incredibly successful place, and our future is bright. We're going to get through this crisis, and the private sector is going to figure out a way to survive and move forward and be able to rely on the great jobs that Amazon and Microsoft and Facebook and all these other amazing companies that are here are going to continue to create and bring in employees that are going to buy dinners at restaurants and get haircuts at salons and all the other great services that small businesses provide. So I'm optimistic about 2021 and beyond. We just need to be able to ride through 2020 together and try to figure out how to pick up the pieces.
Kerri, you've already mentioned the B&O tax. Are there other things that state government can do, and I'll be broad in this and not limit it to the Attorney General, but other things that state government can do to make it just a little bit easier for businesses to survive now or when the stay-at-home order is over?
Yes, echoing what Kevin said, the two areas that come to my mind are the unemployment insurance fund, which you probably know is 100% funded by employers. I'm very concerned that the state is now going to saddle employers with all the experience ratings from all of our staff that we were forced to lay off, and therefore our unemployment insurance rates could quadruple next year if we don't get some relief there. So I'm deeply, deeply concerned about that. I mean, the last thing we need trying to recover from this devastating crisis is to have our unemployment insurance rates increase substantially. The second area is labor and industry workplace regulation. Now, I don't want people to hear this incorrectly. I am all in favor, and I want our workplaces to be safe. At the same time, some of the things that L&I requires, specifically around safety training plans for employees, are very onerous, and even our own employees don't like how onerous they are. So for example, when we hire a new employee, they are supposed to read a 40-page manual with a whole variety of different things that there's safety requirements. And we find during the new hire process that people just look at this and they roll their eyes, and so they don't read it. And therefore, we've got staff who aren't as well trained as we'd like them to be, or the state would like them to be, because it's just too much. And people are not going to read, they're not going to spend the time to read 40 pages and digest it. So it would be very helpful for L&I to actually hear from different industries and be open to, okay, well, here's some things that we may not still need now in 2020. And how can we streamline this so we actually have staff who are buying into this and are not resisting it, and therefore they just roll their eyes and they don't pay attention. So those are my two big areas. Would be the unemployment insurance fund. It's going to have to be rebuilt, of course. And, unfortunately, employers are going to have to pick up some of that tab. But I think that needs to be a priority for state funding, is to utilize tax revenue coming from other places now because of this unprecedented disaster that's drained the fund, and not lay it all on employers, especially small businesses that were forced to shut our doors. And then L&I, the workplace regulations.
And we don't have time to get into this big issue, the issue of the state reporting that hundreds of millions of dollars have been stolen from the state by scammers who are, siphoning off money from the Employment Security Department. They're making false claims for unemployment insurance. I mention it, and we're going to do a whole show on it, because one of the first things I said I would do as Attorney General is create a cybercrime unit. The office always had some version of that, at least in the modern era, until Bob Ferguson came along and he got rid of it. But other states have a cybercrime unit, and if hundreds of millions of dollars of state money being stolen through cybercrime is not a wake-up call to our state government, then I don't know what is. So let me ask kind of the last question I have for you, which is, are you or are your the people you're talking to or your tenants, are they concerned at all about liability for COVID-19 illness or other issues? This has become a national issue of sort of a COVID-19 shield law for some areas like healthcare, but also I guess some of the first lawsuits are being filed against restaurants and other folks. Is that a concern that either of you are hearing about in our state?
It is definitely a concern. I know within the Hospitality Association and all the members that they have asked the association to lobby for that. We're very concerned, with all the challenges that we have right now, and again, trying to rebuild our devastated businesses, to have to worry about a potentially frivolous lawsuit is just something that I can't even, I don't want to wrap my head around. So that's very important.
Kevin, how about you? Are you hearing about this?
To some degree, if the tenants are not concerned about it, they should be. I think that the likelihood is the solution is going to come from the federal government on this issue, and hopefully it will. The Senate will protect us on that score because of the high level of influence of the plaintiffs bar at the state legislature. I think it's unlikely that the state is going to lead a solution that would protect businesses from these type of lawsuits. But it is definitely a big issue that we need to be concerned about. And on top of all the other things we're going to have to deal with in picking up the pieces from this crisis, having to deal with predatory lawsuits from the plaintiffs bar is not one of those things we should have to take on. So I appreciate you thinking about that issue, and I think we need to do what we can to work together to try to prevent the predatory lawsuits whatever way we can.
Well, one of the things I always do as a lawyer when I'm done talking to my clients is I ask, is there anything I missed? I want to ask you both of that. I know this is a big topic, but is there anything else that you really want to get out so I can consider it as part of putting a plan together for helping small business when I'm Attorney General?
Right off the top of my head, no, Mike, I don't. I'm just so appreciative of the thought that you've put into this already, and that you are reaching out to business, particularly small business in general. I mean, that's not something that a lot of statewide candidates do, unfortunately. And we need more of it because, like you said earlier, small business is such an important part of our overall economy. We need big business, we need small business, we need medium business. And so I think it's detrimental to the whole economy and society as a whole when different sectors of the economy are being favored at the expense of others. So I really appreciate the opportunity to join this today and give my feedback, and to know that you're concerned, you care, and that you do have some solutions, and you're also open to other solutions. So thank you.
Kevin, how about you?
Yeah, my hope is that beyond the COVID crisis, that you're providing clarity and impartiality in the Attorney General's office so that businesses can understand how to operate in a legal manner, and that you're focused on state issues, not federal. And I think Mr. Ferguson has just been completely focused on the national issues, and really has left unsolved a lot of problems that we are facing here in the state of Washington. So looking at, I think it's a great opportunity with you as the Attorney General to provide that clarity and start solving some of these problems and bringing back more of a focus on the Washington state issues that we need to be focused on, instead of the Trump issues that Mr. Ferguson seems so compelled to go chase after.
Well, thank you both. My tagline for our campaign is protecting the evergreen state. And that conveys a lot of things, including the fact that we have a wonderful state. And I'm with Kevin. I tend to be an optimist, and I hear that optimism in Kerri as well. But our state officials should be focused on our own state. We have big problems here. We had them before, homelessness being perhaps among the most prominent. And these are being supercharged, and there's new problems that are arising as a result of COVID-19. So in my view, it's all hands on deck, focusing on the people of our state. And as your Attorney General, I will focus on protecting the Evergreen State. Well, that's our show for today. Thank you again, Kerri and Kevin, for joining us. As an attorney for 30 years, I always found that my clients had the best ideas and information needed to win their case or solve their challenge. It was my job to gather that information and turn it into a winning plan. That's what I'll be doing on this issue, how the state can help small business survive and create jobs during COVID-19. This will be the first of many discussions we'll have on this important topic. If you would like to know more about my campaign, please go to mikevasca.com. You can also make a donation there to help pay for this show and to help me become your next Attorney General. Have a great week, and thank you for watching.